Okay, my Friday night movie recommendation this week is House from 1985, directed by Steve Miller. Now, this is not to be confused with the 1977 House, directed by um, Nobuhiko Abayashi, which is a completely bonkers, insane horror movie in itself, and you should definitely go see that one. Uh, but, but this week, let's deal with the 1985 horror movie House. This film was originally supposed to be a straightforward horror film, and then it got a rewrite, and the rewrite had a humorous slant to it, which was great. I mean, it could have been a really superb. I mean, it was a deeply dark horror film. It was going to scare the crap out of people. But the comedy element that got written into it was so good, they decided to go in that direction. And the studio, who had no idea what they're getting, they were expecting straight on dark horror, but they had pretty much given Steve Miner carte blanche. I mean, he had directed two other horror movies that were both, huge successes. Friday the 13th Part 2 and Friday the 13th Part 3. So they knew that they could rely on him for horror. So when they saw the final cut, the studios were very pleased. They said, "Oh, this movie's going to go do great." Actually, the very first cut of this film, when it went out, it did not do. They didn't go out to the theaters, but when it was first reviewed, by the screenmakers, it just didn't cut the mustard. So they went back and re-edited it, and when it re-emerged, it came out superb. So, let me give you an idea of what 1985 was like. Well, way back when she was a struggling actress, Madonna had done some photos for a rather shady individual that was supposed to be a tasteful art project. So they were nude photos, and these photos reemerged once because she was being very popular, and they were bought by both Penthouse and Playboy. So, not what you really wanted, but if you wanted to find that type of stuff, it was out there. New Coke had just released Cherry Coke, which was a big success. However, they also released New Coke, which was a terrible, terrible blight on our pop culture. Basically, they tried to make it sweeter, and no one liked it. They went back to the old Coke. Michael Jackson bought ATV Music, which owned the rights to all the Beatles songs. This kind of put a big damper on the friendship that he had formed with Paul McCartney. So there was that happening. Live Aid did 2 concerts and raised $70 million for. There was this huge famine in Ethiopia, so it was going towards recovery efforts there. And here's an interesting little fact. Symbolics.com was registered, and you're thinking, who the hell is Symbolics.com? Well, they were the very first domain name ever to be registered. There was a time before domain names when people just had to type in a bunch of crappy code to get to a website. Now, one of the reasons this film did so well was because it was playing on the recovering Vietnam vet. Now, keep in mind, Vietnam was still a war that wasn't so far in our past, and in 1980, post-traumatic stress syndrome was finally defined by the American Psychiatric Association as post-traumatic stress disorder. Before then, PTSD. Before then, people only had a vague description of what being shell-shocked was, and no clear treatments. So that was a big. So now people had war movies that started to really explore the trauma of being at war rather than glorifying war, and that was happening during the 80s. And this film was one of those films that was kind of bringing it to the forefront. What really made this film popular, besides the story, was it had a great cast. We're talking, they decided to pull actors and actresses from popular television shows. Willaim Katts from The Greatest American Hero, George Wendt from Cheers, Richar Moll from Night Court, and Kay Lenz from Rich Man, Poor Man. I mean, so these were faces that people saw every day on television. They were recognizable. That people loved these shows. And it was just a pleasure to see them suddenly popping up on the screen and doing something different. And then that was part of the real appeal. Also, the 1980s special effects. This is before CGI. So 1980s practical special effects were fantastic. And this one has tons of it. All superbly done. And so, really funny. A good script that went from horrifying and scaring the bejesus out of you to making you laugh. Characters who you sympathized with because you already knew them or had an emotional connection to them through their other shows. And really good practical. This thing was just set up to succeed at the box office. And it was really right up there during the time. I recently had a chance to meet Willaim Katts at Crypticon, which is here I got him to sign this for me from The Greatest American Hero. So Crypticon is a horror-themed convention that happens at SeaTac. And surprisingly, we really didn't talk about Greatest American Hero or House, but another movie that he was involved in called The Man from Earth, which is a good film, and I really liked it, and I really enjoyed talking to him about that. But anyway, if you're looking for a good little horror movie with a bit of comedy to watch this Friday, I really recommend that you watch House, and you can watch it for free on Tubi. Anyway, that's this week's movie review. Where's the off button?